What's up, dudes? I'm back with another video. Now, this week, Papa Roach begin the Rise of the Roach tour, so I thought there would be no better time than to do a video about Papa Roach. This one was voted for by my patrons over on Patreon, so thanks very much, guys. But yeah, this is literally perfect timing. I'm going to talk about the band's discography, rank the albums from worst to best, chat a little bit about the band, and give you guys my basically dream Papa Roach set list, about 15 songs-ish. So I'll just be interested to see if it's very similar to some of yours. But first of all, let's just find out a little bit of information and history about the band, and then we shall kick on into the albums. So Papa Roach are a metal slash new metal slash alternative metal. It's one of those, I'm sure. Band formed in California in 1993. After signing with DreamWorks Records in 1999, they entered the studio and recorded Infest, of course, and haven't looked back since. So currently in the band, we have Jacoby Shaddix on vocals, Jerry Horton on guitar, Toby Esperance on bass, and Tony Palomero on drums. Interestingly, Papa Roach have only had one lineup change since releasing Infest. Very, very rare for a band these days to keep the original members together for that long. So David Buckner, the original drummer, left the band in 2007. A fun fact, the first iteration of the group actually had a trombone player. Yes, that's right, at some point Papa Roach had a trombone player. Just a little disclaimer before I start, I'm not doing any albums pre-Infest, so no Potatoes for Christmas, no New Old Young Friends or whatever the one from 1997 was called, and also no compilation style album. So Time for Annihilation would have been a big one that people would have got back in the day, but there was only 5 original songs on it and the rest were all live and B-sides. So Time for Annihilation will not be included on this list. We'll be doing everything from Infest onwards. Okay, so Papa Roach have 10 studio albums, and coming in at number 10, bottom of the list, it's 2019's Who Do You Trust? Yeah, not a very interesting listen, this one. The ending is a good start. I know that sounds confusing. The song ending that's at the beginning of the album is a good start, but it's unexpected. Normally they have a song that like punches you in the face and gets you ready. You know, we're here with Papa Roach, get ready to rock out. This one is a more somber start, which is really, really strange. Also, this album was in the mix of really, really great albums. They were on a great run at this point, and it's not as good as anything that came before or anything that came after. Weirdly, the critics really, really liked this one, but the fans didn't at all. Normally I only see that happening with mostly movies, but yeah, with this one, the fans really weren't that on board with it, but the critics loved it. Jacoby did say in interviews that the band wanted to go in a different direction and try some different stuff, but for me, just didn't work at all. Definitely the most lackluster Papa Roach album for me. You know, the whole point of a Papa Roach album is to rock out, feel the energy, feel the vibe, you know, positive vibes, everyone's just going for it, but this album has absolutely none of that for me. So yeah, definitely by a country mile, firmly at the bottom of the list. Who Do You Trust? In at number 9, it's 2009's Metamorphosis. Deep into what I call the rock and roll phase of Papa Roach. They were leaning more towards that rock sound than they were the new metal sound that they were known for. I am putting this above Who Do They Trust by quite a lot, I think, but it's more cohesive. The songs are better. It just has more oomph, you know. I didn't like that rock and roll phase, but it definitely has a little bit of oomph and a little bit of something to it, whereas Who Do You Trust is just flat as hell for me. But there were some songs, some little gems that I forgot about. Obviously, the big single, Hollywood Whore, I do remember that one. That was a really great song. Change or Die was a track I completely forgotten about. Lifeline, and I Almost Told You I Loved You. So there were a few songs on this that I actually enjoyed, but this just phase in general of Papa Roach was not my favourite, and I didn't like that sort of direction they were going in. So couple of gems, but it sits at number 9. But as we'll see in the next one, this phase was not my favourite. At number 8, we have 2006's The Paramore Sessions. It certainly starts with a bang, this album. To Be Loved is an amazing Papa Roach song. I'm sure a lot of you know it because it is one of your favorites, I'm sure. But yeah, I can see why this album was so well liked at the time. Has a lot of energy, and it does just keep going throughout the album, which I really like about it. The second track, Alive, is also an absolute banger, one of my most underrated Papa Roach tracks. I also forgot how much of a great track Time Is Running Out is. And yeah, I think that is actually up there with some of the band's best ballads. But yeah, The World Around You and No More Secrets, they start to sound a little bit Velvet Revolver-y, which you can see at the time that's the sort of way that Papa Roach were going, trying to get all those little rock and roll elements and add them in. So that does make sense for the time. But I don't really have too much to say about this one. I will just say that I consider this the best part of their rock and roll phase because they hadn't put it into sort of full gear yet. So I do like this album, but I like the other Papa Roach albums a lot more. So this one sits at number 8. At number 7, I've got 2015's Fear. This one coming off the back of what many P. Roach fans consider to be the rebirth album in The Connection. This one takes the reins and stays on that path, you know, post new metal, catchy anthems, done with ferocity, you know, genuine love for the messages, just basically everything that encapsulates Papa Roach. Kicks off with Face Everything and Rise, which is an absolute banger to start. I really wish the band would play that song more live. The next track, Skeletons, has to be one of my most underrated tracks. It's so good. Continues in the same vein again with Falling Apart, which is a great mix of ballad and bounce. The same could be said for Love Me Till It Hurts. And Gravity, the album's most emotional track, with a really cool feature from Marina Brink from In This Moment. The downfall of this album, however, is that it drops off about halfway through. It doesn't really continue with that quality all the way, unfortunately. So you get probably 6 or 7 songs through the album and you think, wow, they were all amazing, and then it really does start to dip in quality, which is why it's so low on my list. But the first half of this album is definitely worth listening to. This is in what I call the P. Roach sweet spot, sandwiched in between like 2 amazing albums in 2013's The Connection and 2017's Crooked Teeth. But I do still think the first half of this is definitely worth a listen. Some great bangers in there, and it sits at number 7. At number 6, I have 2004's Getting Away with Murder. Right off the bat, Blood is an amazing opener, quite dark and brooding for Papa Roach. It's a little bit different, but I really do like it as an opening track. It has a lot of ferocity. The band was trying to move away from the rap rock sound of the first 2 albums. Obviously, this is 2004, so nu metal was totally dead in the water by this point. Bands like Papa Roach were stuck between a rock and a hard place, you know. Nu metal was dying, and emo and metalcore, you know, bands like Killswitch Engage and My Chemical Romance were starting to take over. So all of these bands had to decide what their new identity was going to be and how they were going to find it. So they did come up with some interesting ideas, but they were executed to varying degrees. This leads to some forgettable tracks, but some absolute bangers as well. So very much a mixed bag. Obviously, the title track, Getting Away with Murder, one of the best Papa Roach songs. What a great song. Scars, probably the band's biggest ballad of the 2000s, I would say. I mean, it still hits the spot today, still a great listen. There are a few real hidden gems on this one as well. Take Me, Be Free, Tyranny of Normality are definitely all sit into that category of being gems that I really enjoy from this album. So like I said, overall, a mixed bag. Some forgettable tracks, but also some bangers. So a lot of this is worth your time, but you might find yourself just skipping past the filler tracks and getting to the more, you know, meat of this album. Side note, there is a great gig to accompany this, Live and Dangerous in Chicago. It's on YouTube. It's the rawest Papa Roach gig you'll ever watch, and it's just songs from the first 3 albums. It's absolutely incredible. So if you get a chance, watch Live and Dangerous in Chicago on YouTube. I guarantee you'll love it. Okay, this is where it gets really hard, and these might change over time or be different each year, because when we done the top 5 on the Dear Download podcast for our Papa Roach special, go and check that out if you want this in a longer form. I think some of these were in a different order. So on a re-listen, some of these albums I listen to loads, some I don't listen to that much. On re-listen, this is how the 5 sit this time. So at number 5, we have 2017's Crooked Teeth. So many hard-hitting tracks on this one. It's the middle phase of what you would call modern Papa Roach. Lots of different elements, but making them glue together brilliantly. Plenty of heavy guitars, loads of great hooks. It's a real memorable listen with some great high points. Born for Greatness is a mix of trap beats, you know, like a real positive message. American Dreams is like a melancholy look at Americana. Really, really great song. Periscope is by far my favourite electronic driven ballad that the band have ever done. I honestly think that track is just incredible and I love listening to it. It really does make me feel some emotions, that track. I love it. Help, obviously, being the standout massive big single from this album, well, kind of along with Born for Greatness as well. But yeah, Help is probably easily one of the best Papa Roach songs. Just an incredible song, great video. I just love it so much. It's just an absolute Papa Roach classic. My only issue with this one is that it falls off for the last 3 tracks. Regardless of that, they're not bad tracks, but you know, that just the first 3 quarters of this album are just absolutely incredible, and then those last few tracks, it just gets a little bit somber and dies down a bit. It's a shame they didn't maybe mix the tracks up a bit more, and it might have sort of beefed up that last part of the album. A very strong album, just really good. Not too many bad things to say about this one at all. Really great. Continued the journey of modern Papa Roach, you know, incorporating all those sounds and some really, really great standout tracks. So at number 5, it's Crooked Teeth. At number 4, I have 2002's Love Hate Tragedy. It was 2002, obviously Infest had only come out 2 years before, but they were already trying to step away from what the band had done. I think that's one of the things that Papa Roach always done. They were always trying to get away from the sound that they just created, add new elements. I do think they're a far more interesting band in that respect than what people do give them credit for. Only slightly dialed back from the sort of new metal sound that they had on Infest, but they did dial back on the rapping, changed guitar tones, and the grooves were slightly more rocky, but still with that kind of new metal edge. Interestingly, She Loves Me Not and Walking Through Barbed Wire were originally supposed to be on Infest, but obviously ended up on this. I think they were demos from 1999 that were supposed to go on the album. She Loves Me Not was a massive single from this album. I'm sure a lot of you remember it continuously being on Kerrang back in the day if you are of a certain age. Time and Time Again is another classic that was played on Kerrang as well all the time. Great video. Some songs that have been sort of forgotten by time. I feel like this is quite a forgotten Papa Roach album overall, but when you listen to it you do forget how good it actually was. Underrated gems like Walking Through Barbed Wire that I previously mentioned. The incredibly riffy Born With Nothing, Die With Everything. That is absolutely insanely good. I'm really gutted that they don't even acknowledge that song anymore because it's so good. Code of Energy, again, is another one that I think is just a hidden gem that you should probably check out if you haven't. But yeah, I think this also has one of the best Papa Roach enders of all time with the title track, Love Hate Tragedy. It's a really half somber, half energetic way to end the album, and I just think it's really good. Overall, fantastic. This album is just as good as I remember it being. I hadn't listened to it for probably 4 or 5 years, and yeah, still blown away by this one. Just love the sound, love the direction that they were going in. You know, new metal, the angsty new metal side of them was slowly dying out, and they were just getting a little bit more moody rather than angsty, and I think that it just complemented the band's sound really, really well. So yeah, at number 4, I have Love Hate Tragedy. In at number 3, it's 2012's The Connection. The first time that the band got back to kind of sounding like they had before. This obviously coming after the rock and roll phase of Papa Roach that I said with Metamorphosis and the Paramore sessions. Jacoby did say in interviews that it's a rediscovery of the basic elements of Papa Roach, and this is where they really started to dial up and add in the electronic sounds at the time, which at first was a bit like, oh, okay, that's different. Obviously now it's just always incorporated into the Papa Roach sound, but back then it was like, oh, okay, they're just going to use loads of electronic stuff as well. But I do think it works really well with their kind of sound. This is the album that brought me back on board with Papa Roach in a huge way. You know, no huge singles at the time from this one, just an absolutely solid album that just gives you no time to rest, tune to tune. The whole thing has an amazing energy, gets you pumped. Also has some absolutely underrated gems that you guys should hear if you haven't. Where Did the Angels Go is just pure riffage. Silence is the Enemy, Wish You Never Met Me. This might not stand out for the casual Papa Roach fan. You know, this might be an album that they won't necessarily see on the front page of Spotify, for instance. But for us diehard fans, it's one that's very, very close to our hearts. And The Connection is quite a poignant title because this is where a lot of us reconnected with the band and sort of found Papa Roach again from all the ones that we'd kind of fallen off on the last few albums before. So yeah, I cannot say enough good things about this album. I think it is absolutely incredible. I think if you're a Papa Roach fan and you haven't heard The Connection, you should definitely listen to it. Even if you're a casual fan, I think you would really enjoy where this album takes you. So yeah, at number 3, it's The Connection. And at number 2, it's 2022's Ego Trip. For me, the pinnacle of modern era Papa Roach, combining everything they've been experimenting with before over the last 3 albums and coming up with something just absolutely consistent from start to finish, and a really interesting record as well. Really great production, very punchy. Song-wise, the album starts straight away with a punch in the face, that is Kill the Noise, great single. They get back to their rap metal roots on Stand Up and Swerve. They're quite interesting, different tracks. Ego Trip has that real modern Bring Me the Horizon sound to it with a little Papa Roach twist. Dying to Believe is an emotional track that has all the little tricks that the band is known for with their little sort of ballad-esque songs. It also has a pretty heavy breakdown at the end of this song, which Papa Roach don't do that often. Leave a Light On is the emotional ballad at the album, something that these guys do really well, and I know that this one in the last couple of years really has connected well with the fans. It is a beautiful song with some really, really nice sentiments. The final 3 tracks, No Apologies, Cut the Line and I Surrender, end the album off perfectly. You know, you instantly want to start the album again, come back for more. Really great hooks, really great quality throughout. There is no filler at all on this album. It's banger after banger. This one gives you no time to rest apart from a couple of somber moments, but even then it still just pushes along at such an amazing rate. An absolutely stellar album for me, one that I highly recommend. It is the depiction of everything that modern Papa Roach and what they are doing right at the moment with their sound. If you haven't checked it out, I really do recommend it. I think, especially if you're a Papa Roach fan, you'll enjoy it, but even someone who's just coming in might get a massive kick out of this album. I certainly do. I'll stop talking about it now and we'll get to the big boy number 1. And if you haven't guessed yet, at the number 1 spot, I've given it to, of course, 2000's Infest. It's hard to put into words just how influential, how incredibly good this album is. You know, even the singles themselves that are just so massive in this album, Between Angel and Insects, Last Resort, Broken Home, Dead Cell. You know, this album just has so many great classic Papa Roach tracks. There's no filler. I think every track is brilliant. Obviously ones that don't get talked about much, like Blood Brothers, the first track, Infest. You guys, if you're going to this Papa Roach show, are just going to have such a blast listening to this one. And Tightrope, of course, which has become a little cult classic, was kind of an almost hidden track on the original album, but of course on Spotify now you can just really skip to it. But yeah, it can't be understated how important this album is. This album was about when new metal was literally, I'd say apart from hip hop, pretty much the biggest music on the planet. I think that this album stands up next to, you know, the big boys of the time, Toxicity, Hybrid Theory, Chocolate Starfish. I think it sits around all those as being an absolute inspiration to a generation, basically. And I think that, you know, we can see by what Papa Roach have done with ticket sales, it's still providing that sort of angsty message to kids these days as well. So it's not even like a generational thing. It's completely bypassed that, just like Hybrid Theory, Toxicity and Chocolate Starfish. Kids today are still loving it as much as we did in 2000. So yeah, it has to go top of the list just because it sold so many records at the time. Everyone knows it. It's got classic tracks. It's so influential to an entire generation, and I really do love this album. So at number 1, it's Infest, well deserved. So after listening to all these albums, I thought, what would be my dream Papa Roach set? Now, you guys can see this on screen now. This for me would be the ultimate Papa Roach gig. Kicking off with Between Angels and Insects, straight away, no messing around. Then into To Be Loved, because it's just got so much energy and pushes it forward. Then, you know, your classic tracks, Getting Away with Murder, She Loves Me Not, Into Help. And then a little bit of, you know, a one that no one would expect, Where Did the Angels Go? Really heavy, really riffy. Continuing that, Dead Cell, into Kill the Noise, interface everything and Rise. So just 4 absolute guitar driven, you know, everyone going mental tracks. Then take it right down with Tightrope, build it up again, Born for Greatness, Scars, everyone can get emotional, Broken Home, we can all get emotional, and then end with Infest, and then Last Resort as the encore or whatever they want to do. For me, that would be an absolutely immense dream Papa Roach set. But let me know yours in the comments, because I'd really like to know what your favourite songs are, and albums as well. How do you rank these albums? Because I'm sure you guys have a very different to mine. Some of the people I've spoken to have a very different interpretation of Papa Roach albums, so it'd be interesting to hear what you guys have to say. Yeah, so there you go, guys. That was the Papa Roach albums ranked and my dream set list. So yeah, I really do love this band, so I could talk a lot about Papa Roach. They have been a mainstay of me listening to music literally for the last 25 years. So yeah, they're a big part of my life, and I know that a lot of you guys enjoy Papa Roach as well. Thank you very much to my patrons who are on the screen now. Thank you for all the support. I love you very much. If you do want to come support me on Patreon, links in the description. Come and support me on Patreon. But I do really appreciate everything you guys are doing for me. You know, I'm so close to getting to 3K now, which was my aim originally. So just thank you for all the support. Keep sharing, keep commenting. I absolutely love talking to you guys. This channel is just done so well. It's outdoing all of my expectations, and I'm very, very happy, as you can see. So thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you dudes in the next video. You should go and subscribe to my channel. Just because. Come on, subscribe.